Yeah, there we go.
All
Over
right.
to you.
Well, thank you for that very warm welcome. And you'll be happy to know there is actually a mini fashion show on one of my slides. The reason I included the hobbies is not just to add color, but since this session is specifically about inner parenting and how that kind of looks in action, I thought offering a glimpse of some of my inner children functions and the things that they like to do. My introverted feeling is the part that likes to tell stories and write poetry. My extroverted sensing is the part that likes to wear pretty things and fun things and make things physically. So um, I will share my slide deck and let me get rolling in uh, the presentation view. Oh, well, I need to go back to the beginning.
I
How do I
can
do
see your
that?
slides. Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah. Okay. So, welcome to Self-Parenting with Type. And I'm going to make a plug for Joel and Antonia's session. If you are watching this recording later, go watch that first because they did a really lovely job of setting up some of the theory. We did not coordinate our presentation, so there's going to be a little overlap, but I don't think too much. And yeah, here's just the same bio that you already heard. So, our agenda for today, I want to explain a little bit about what self-parenting or inner parenting, I kind of use the terms interchangeably, is both just kind of conceptually and then with type involved, and a brief overview of where it comes from. Take a look at how I conceptualize the four people within with respect to our functions and then how inner parenting can help specifically with EQ and emotional intelligence. And hopefully, there will be plenty of time for an active imagination activity to meet your inner child and then just kind of discuss how that goes for everyone.
And I would
So,
just have a question in the chat
oh,
whether the
yeah,
slides will be made available afterwards.
they certainly can be.
Okay.
I I I will have to send you a different version because I think I corrected something this morning, reviewing
Okay.
it one last time. So
All right.
I'll
No problem.
I'll let you
But the
distribute
answer is
afterward.
yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Over to
and
you.
thank you for monitoring that because I do not see the chat on my
Not to
screen.
worries.
So yeah, okay. So um, self-parenting or reparenting is a therapeutic technique for helping people grow past emotional developmental arrests and wounds from childhood in order to form a more secure adult identity. And uh, these are some examples of dynamics that might happen with our parents and how that affects us when we're children. So, if we have, for example, parents or caretakers that are absent or unreliable, then the child might feel like they need to function as a little adult. Or if our caretakers are really highly critical, a child is very likely to create an internal self critic as a self protective mechanism to say, let me criticize myself and run everything I do through the eyes of that critic in order to prevent external criticism, in order to be good enough. If we have caretakers that are really emotionally reactive or unpredictable, we might learn kind of hyper attuning to them and their moods in order to kind of predict it. And if we're focusing on their emotions, we're not able to focus on our own. Or we might absorb that pattern of reactivity and then just find ourselves perpetuating it, reproducing it. If we have caretakers that are really passive or overly indulgent, then we might never learn how to persist at something challenging or to go all the way through to accomplishing something. And not everybody grew up in a traumatizing family, but everybody will grow up with some kind of wounds from childhood, some kind of pattern that we picked up and just never let go of, a belief that we internalized, a point of pain, and the coping mechanism that we use to deal with it. Often we're not even consciously aware of these things, and sometimes we don't even know that we're still doing them as adults, or it's just because we've always done it, it doesn't occur to us that we could change that and do something differently. So We didn't get to choose our childhood patterns, like the situation we were in or how our, you know, uh, forming psyche reacted to it. And we didn't really choose on a conscious level the coping mechanisms. We just grabbed what we thought might be effective, and if it worked, we held on. But as adults, we can deliberately learn or relearn any of these patterns. So, kind of continuing in that vein, we actually, on a psychological level, are all just like we're amalgamations of many different versions of ourself from different times in our life. And if we're still using a lesson that we learned when we were young, especially if we're using it in a rigid way, then we're essentially acting as if we are still that younger version of ourselves, that younger part. And sometimes that even means we're acting with the same level of maturity and experience that we had at that age that we kind of picked up that belief or that coping mechanism. And when we connect to things that we enjoyed as a child, whether that's activities or environments, we're also kind of acting as that younger part of ourself. We're setting down all of our adult awareness and responsibilities and just enjoying ourselves, remembering what it was to play and to be light and silly and kind of carefree. So these younger parts of us, I want to emphasize, are really neutral in quality. They're not better or worse than any other part of us, and they're not more lovable or less lovable than any other part of us. So they can be either a resource or a problem, kind of depending on how we handle them and where they are. The concept of the inner child as part of the system of the psyche actually goes back to Jung and some of the original roots of psychodynamic theory. Self-parenting, as we talk about it now, was developed in the 1970s and popularized in the 1980s in certain like counseling therapy type spaces. Internal family systems is one of the ways it has kind of been brought forward that's still used and in fact gaining popularity. Especially in like the last 10 or 15 years, I've really seen that boosted as a popular therapy technique. And in terms of how it came to mingle with type, as far as I know, it is a layering of John Beebe's concept of the third function of eternal child and the auxiliary function of the good parent with personality hackers car model because they conceptualize each function as a passenger in a car, and they have different ages and different sort of purposes. So I learned inner parenting actually from Maria Sumaloff. She created the Four People Within model, and I know she was influenced both by John Beebe's concept and personality hackers concept, as well as directly from the kind of therapeutic aspect of self-parenting. So I'm sure other people have derived it in different ways. That was just how I came to it. And I have actually been using inner parenting with type since 2017. And for me personally, it was essentially an overnight change in my relationship to myself. I used to be very perfectionistic and kind of rigid about uh, how I behaved and just didn't have a lot of space for my emotionality or a lot of grace for it. I don't know, I'm probably sounding like an INTJ stereotype as I say that. There, sometimes the stereotypes are real. And so just this concept of looking at myself as having other parts with value and feelings of their own. And also, this is how you conceptualize it and how you interact with it was just an incredible tool and resource. So, I probably anticipated this a little bit, but who are the four people within? Our dominant function would be akin to our adult self. That is our most mature, developed, and expansive self, the one who's kind of architecting our life and that we're trying to, you know, become. That's our work in the world. That's kind of how we define who we are. And our auxiliary function is our inner parent. This is another mature and seasoned part of ourself. And it's the skills that we have developed in order to reach the goals of that adult self. Our tertiary function is akin to our inner 10-year-old. It's idealistic, often perfectionistic or rigid inner child, and they are old enough to have some good ideas, but really not mature enough to be making life-altering decisions. And finally, the inferior function is akin to maybe a 3-year-old. So this is going to be our most tender and unrefined part. It's the inner child part that speaks less with words and clear concepts and more with just emotion and impulsivity. So, to give you a bit of a visual, I have always loved this activity of creating kind of a map of your four different people. So, it's laid out again, similar to the car model. So, my introverted intuiting is the driver or the adult self. My extroverted thinking is my inner parent, and my introverted feeling is the poetic kind of dreamy kind of otherworldly, and then my extroverted sensing is like I'm laughing, I like costumes, I'm having fun in the here and now. And if you want a bit of homework to take away from this session, I would encourage you to find some pictures of either of yourself or of activities or moods that you feel like kind of represent each aspect of you. I find it to just be a really powerful, really cool way to get to know yourself a little better and kind of see your different facets in a new way. So inner parenting is really, oh, Renee, I see Dario entering, so I'll let him in. Um, Inner parenting is really about making space for all of the parts of ourself. And the basic directive of inner parenting is using the auxiliary function to create a bridge between the dominant function and your third and fourth functions, your inner children. And the goal here is kind of twofold. First, you want to keep your inner children, your lower functions, from interfering with the goals of the adult self. But you also are seeking to keep the adult self from becoming one-sided or unbalanced in a way that suppresses or neglects or rejects that tertiary and inferior function. Because we are more than our dominant function and we are more than our top two functions. We're complete people. We have access to, in fact, all 8 functions. And inner parenting is really about actively creating a space where our lower functions can be honored and integrated and considered. And we are also more than our type. And inner parenting can help with this too. We have physical bodies that have biological needs for fuel and water and rest. And especially those of us who have high intuiting preferences, it can sometimes be all too easy to forget about that. We have a nervous system that feels emotions, that in fact creates our emotions as responses to things in our environment. Are we safe? Are we not safe? And we have these cool physical senses that allow us to get input from the real world and experience pleasure. Beyond type, we have fears from past experiences and beliefs that we internalized. We have hopes and dreams, and we have connections with other people. We play roles in relationships with other people, and all of those are part of who we are too. So, kind of linking this to the theme of emotional intelligence. EQ is having an awareness of our own emotions and an awareness of other people's emotions. And it's being able to manage our own emotions and the actions we take as a result of them. And it's managing our actions in our relationships, both our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with others. Self-parenting can improve our emotional awareness and our behavior management, in part because it gives us a pathway to letting go of some of the pain points that we've been holding on to and some of those rigid beliefs from childhood or, different parts of our younger self that may or may not still be serving us. And our wounds tend to get stored in those lower functions for the simple reason that we don't use those functions enough to mature them past whatever that immature use was. So often when we're operating out of an old belief, we're also operating out of one of our lower functions. And sometimes when we're in touch with one of those functions, we're actually also falling back into some of our old belief patterns, even if the mature parts of us have grown past them and no longer think that way or no longer act that way. So, making space for our inner children is making space for the suppressed emotions and drives. And it's also kind of actively building skill to deal with them in more healthy ways. And it puts the eyes of our very flexible, nuanced adult self onto a situation that otherwise might be guided by a really simplistic or rigid perspective from the inner child. And it also creates opportunities for joy. Because if you are able to clear out some of those old, painful, stuck emotions or self limiting beliefs, then what you create space for is things like play and creativity and openness and connection, exploration. Those are all positive things that, frankly, we need more of in our lives. The whole notion that adulthood is all very serious, all work and no play is terrible and self-limiting, and we should be honoring our inner child aspects to bring more of that playfulness and joy from childhood forward. In my observation, the two inner child functions will probably have a different emotional tone. So, for me personally, my introverted feeling has a lot of sadness. So if I'm feeling sad, lonely, rejected, despairing, something like that, it's almost always linked to beliefs or perceptions in my introverted feeling. And my inferior extroverted sensing is where I tend to store fear. So if I'm feeling incompetent or afraid or uncertain, that links back to what Joel and Antonia were saying. Like that's kind of the seat of uncertainty, right? It's that inferior function. So there's a lot of fear there for me. But I've seen other people have different emotions. Sometimes it might be anger. Sometimes it might be adventure or aggression. It might be real comfort seeking or perfectionism. I mean, literally, you can have any sort of emotional cluster. It's simply what what you got stuck on when you were younger. And self-parenting, if you're going to do it effectively, relies on being kind of a good parent, being a parent who has a lot of attunement and compassion for these young, underdeveloped parts of ourself. A lot of empathy and curiosity. Like, I want to understand where this part of me is coming from. Why do they believe what they believe? How are they seeing this situation? And then being able to offer kind of responsible adult leadership that's creating a safe container for the inner children to know that they don't have to make decisions above their pay grade. They're not having to make adult level decisions. You have an inner parent function who's doing that. So, and also to know that their needs and their perspective is going to be taken into account. That it's not just, oh, well, I have, an inner parent function who's going to make the decisions, but they're an autocrat and I'm not, going to be considered. Like, no, the inner parent takes them into account. So, I think this might be, yes. Okay, so this is my last slide, and then maybe we'll stop and see if anyone has questions before we get into the activity. So I just wanted to offer a couple examples of inner parenting in action. So again, as an INTJ, my inner parent is extroverted thinking, and that is not necessarily one of the functions we would associate with a very kind of maternal, empathetic, compassionate sort of energy. So that is reflected in how I handle my inner parenting. My extroverted thinking goes mama bear, very fierce, protective, and very competent adult. That extroverted thinking is a shield against external harms and also against internal harms. So, for example, with my introverted feeling, this say I was rejected by a potential romantic interest. My introverted, or not rejected, but ghosted. So my introverted feeling might be very hurt by this and feel rejected and despairing, but it's also very idealistic. And oh, but I want to think the best of someone and give them another chance. And so left to its own to make that decision, introverted feeling might be, a little too forgiving and a little too open. So here, extroverted thinking is actually going to come in and kind of protect it from itself and say, okay, I recognize that you feel very forgiving and you still have positive regard for this person. So here's a set of parameters that if they do this and this, then we can re-engage with them. And then it's like a simple question, did they do it? Yes or no? And introverted feeling feels like, okay, my desire to stay connected was considered, but I'm not at risk here because something that creates better standards of behavior is making the decision and actually kind of setting those parameters. So that's maybe an example of how the extroverted thinking can be a parent that protects the inner child from itself and its own um, sort of limitations. Another example with my extroverted sensing might be feeling nervous to start a project and something new. I haven't tried this before, so I feel scared that I won't get it right. I'm feeling maybe a little bit incompetent, and because of this, I'm avoiding starting. So extroverted thinking can come in and say, "Hey, here are all the times that we have started a project before, and here's the skills that we've used, and here's the successes that we had. This is not a new thing. In fact, it's a new form of this thing we've done a dozen times." And in that sense, it can kind of coach that inferior function past the fears and past the resistance to getting started and actually say, oh, okay, I just have to take this step and then do this one thing. And then, oh, what next? I did it, and it kind of again provides that leadership. So that's just some examples of how it can look in action. So yeah, let me stop sharing my screen so I can see faces and ask if there's any questions for the theory part.
Shall I unspotlight you so we can easily see everybody? Is it better like that?
Yeah,
Who wants to go first?
I mean, we don't have to have questions. I can keep going. I just wanted to open the floor in case.
I might ask a question. I don't know the Enneagram very well slash at all,
Mhm.
but when you said that the in the lower functions that we get stuck on them and the emotion gets wrapped up in them, that sounded like the complex. Is that something that an Enneagram would kind of overlay? Are you familiar with that as well, or am I completely making that up?
I am familiar with the Enneagram, and that could very easily affect how our inner child picks up on the emotions, like what defenses that we're using. Um,
Would that be complementary? I mean, obviously they're looking at different things, right?
yeah, I mean, they're kind of looking at different things. I could see it being very complementary. I'm just sitting here trying to think through examples of people that I know where I've seen their inner children and also know their Enneagram type. Um, I know for me, I'm an Enneagram 7, and my extroverted sensing can definitely get very wild. And then it will run out of energy, like physically, I will run out of energy before it can wreck things too badly. So definitely part of my inner parenting is controlling that aspect of my Enneagram. So that might um, that desire to just avoid with frivolity and with play and with new opportunities and distractions.
Just to signal 5 minutes, Elena. Well, four now.
No, we started at the half hour.
Oh, you're right.
Don't give
Sorry.
me a panic attack.
I started panicking. It's my pee, you know. So
It's like that we haven't done the
I'm late. I'm
activity
late.
yet.
I'm late. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else before we jump into our active imagination?
Well, just as a fellow INTJ preference, I recognized both of the things that you said in terms of, so it's a very small sample, isn't it? But
Hmm.
it just demonstrates that at least there's some kind of resonance between two INTJs on this, which is what you'd expect.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Well, I will resume my screen share. And let's see. Oh, let me go from current slide, resume my slideshow. Okay. So, uh, just to explain the activity that we're going to do, on the next page, I have two pictures. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to look at the two pictures and just sort of see which one you feel more drawn to, and just kind of stare at it. And if you keep looking at it and kind of open your mind to the possibilities and just sort of, let your thoughts drift with it, let yourself vibe with it, most likely you will start to see more in the picture. Like maybe it starts moving, maybe elements of it start interacting, or maybe you start interacting with the picture, or you enter the scene, or you're somehow, interacting with elements of it. And this is what we want. This is using like the image as a trigger for our imagination to kind of drop into a receptive, intuitive state. And when I show you the pictures, what I want you to have is the intention of I would like to meet one of my inner children. It's probably best not to ask which one, or not to kind of predetermine which one, because that's going to depend on the relationships you have with those parts of yourself. And one might be really eager to connect, and the other might be more shy or feel really hurt and disregarded, and like you haven't paid enough attention to me lately. And, you might not consciously know what those relationships are, what your inner children are feeling in advance. So, since we're just trying to touch in with, one of your inner children today, just kind of keep in mind, like, be as open as possible to what emerges. And it doesn't have to even be one of your functions specifically. It can just be a younger part of yourself, or a part of yourself that you haven't thought about in a long time, or haven't connected with recently. And just to kind of slow everything down and put everybody in the right state after all of the rushing from session to session and all of the learning. Let's just take a few minutes to simply breathe. Just kind of relax into the feeling of your breath moving into your body and out again. And letting your awareness just drop a little bit out of the fast-paced, really thinking, intellectualizing mind, and get a little more experiential, a little more in touch with your body self, with the here and now that you're experiencing. Maybe notice the sounds in your environment. If there's rain, if there's traffic in the background, if there's bird song. Maybe think about the way gravity is kind of pulling you toward the earth and the surface that you're sitting on, and how it's sheltering you and kind of keeping you right here, right now. And when you're ready, open your eyes and see which image you kind of feel more drawn to, and just watch it and see how it opens up. And we'll just stay with it for about 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, that's been about 10 minutes. So maybe take another minute to say goodbye and then we will come back together. Okay, I went ahead and stopped sharing so that we can kind of talk about that if anybody was able to touch in maybe with a part of themselves that they don't normally speak to or see. I don't know. How was that?
Well,
If
I can jump in.
yeah.
I always jump in with these things, but so of the two images, the one on the right was the one that felt actually most familiar and comfortable to me. It felt like an introverted, intuitive sort of image. But the one I was really drawn to was the left, which is really
Hmm.
interesting. And the specifics of the skydiver and the penguin, and was it underwater or was it where were we and where was that? Who was the boy and what was what was that object on the bottom right hand corner? Was that a radio microphone? So there's a lot of I really enjoy getting drawn into the sensory detail of that in a way that normally if I saw those two pictures in an art gallery, I'd definitely stop at the one on the right,
Hmm.
but I didn't here. So
Hmm.
that was
Yeah.
interesting to me in itself.
Yeah, and it sounds like you actually did spend the time kind of with your inferior sensing, kind of looking at it and just kind of cataloging the picture and seeing what was there.
Very much.
Beautiful. Yeah. Shirley.
Hey. Of course, I was drawn to the one on the right, and I'm sure that others felt this way, but I felt that it was a portal to both the past, revisiting the past and your inner child, and also your future, um, and and anything you were working on, whether it was a creative project, um, a new pathway into the future, a new project. Um, and that you could pretty much layer any meaning into that photograph. So it was very helpful, that photograph. I did notice that it was AI generated. um, so I got lost in that, looking at the AI generated details, which then, let my mind drift into
Hmm.
any portal I wanted to. It was very relaxing.
Yeah. And did you have a sense of touching in with either or with any kind of particular child aspect, or was it just kind of a nice meditation?
Yes, I did. I revisited an image that I remember recalling about my childhood, um, where I felt seen,
Mm,
and it had solved why I obsess over certain things. And it wasn't, I realized that it was not, I knew it wasn't nostalgia, but it was about innocence. And it was a moment in my life, several moments, where I actually felt seen.
mm.
And then I realized that these themes come up in my life, but I'd never really connected it to my childhood. So I need to revisit those more often.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, and I also saw my future as well.
Very, very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very helpful.
Yeah. Anyone else have something they want to share? Antonia. Yeah.
So the I chose the one on the right as well, and the word "seen" came up for me. It literally looks like an eyeball, right? It's got an orb and it has the veins through it. And that emerged for me after I remembered I'm the youngest in my family, and my siblings are quite a bit older than me. So they were teenagers when I was really little. And, they were going through teenage stuff. And so it seemed like my parents and my brother and sister were always fighting. And there was this moment in my childhood where I remember that they had been fighting for so long during the day that they had started when it was daytime, but then it went into the night and the entire house was pitch dark because they had just been in their room fighting for so long. And I was pretty little. I was probably like 6 maybe. And I remember sitting at the end of my hall. Then the only light that was on in the entire house was this little strip of light underneath my parents' door. And wondering if I was going to get dinner or should I turn lights on, or like I just was really uncertain. And the fact that this was a light source and it was an orb that looked like an eye reflected back that I think there was like a lot of moments of feeling kind of unseen and forgotten. Like there was always business to be done with my older siblings, and that I was just kind of my nickname Caboose, because I was unexpected, and everybody always said that. They were like, "Yeah, you were the unplanned one. You were the caboose." And so what's interesting about this is it's a very gentle picture. It makes me think of like kind of a comforting, gentle, felt a little introverted sensing. And I don't think that that part of me feels unsafe. I don't think that that part of me feels like that's not the part that I think has wounding. I think it is my extroverted feeling disconnection. It's that child part of me that feels like I'm always just a little disconnected. And to speak to the person who mentioned Enneagram before, I'm a 3. And so feeling like I have to earn my place at the table is always a theme. Like I have to do extra to be able to be the part of everybody else. And this kind of pulled me into this place of like, well, what if there was just this blast of light that was just looking at you? Right. And that there's just there's no question in that part of you that you're actually being seen, like by a light, as opposed to a light being almost like a vacuum and darkness all around in that one memory. So no, it was really nice. It was actually really nice sort of diagnostic about which part of me has a need, which part is the hungrier part.
Yeah,
And what it's really fundamentally hungry for. So thank you.
that's beautiful. And now that you can use that inner parent TI to be that light, like I see you, and kind of feed
Yeah.
that. Yeah. In,
Yeah.
in contrast, I'll share this that my inner child was extroverted sensing, and it was drawn to that same portal, but it was like, hey, let's go see what's in that field. And we just spent the whole time picking flowers and then made like flower crowns together. And I took that very much as hey, we need to go outside and pick some flowers this spring, so I will try to do that tomorrow.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Gosh, thank you all for sharing. I know some of this is touching on actually kind of personal, vulnerable themes, and so I appreciate the trust that you're kind of showing in this container we've created together to actually articulate some of that. And I guess I think that was really like the last slide that I have. Otherwise, we can look at Q&A, or we can just stay where we are and open it up to any other like comments or questions more generally that you might have.
I don't know if it was the longest moment of silence in one of these conferences, but that was, I'm assuming, quite testing for our colleagues with an E preference. But even I noticed that we even have an I preference. I resisted looking at my phone, because they came. I always have something going on, I always fall asleep doing something on my phone, in bed. Either I'm listening to a podcast or I'm doing a little, crosswords or whatever. It's my little me time before going to bed where I decompress by making sure I'm not thinking of other stuff. I'm just doing a little something. And so I thought that was quite interesting. I was also drawn to the one on the right. I kept trying to go to the left. I found it too busy. I found it very hard to make any sense out of it. The other one almost felt like also like a birth canal. You're
Mm.
coming through this thing, and then you're going to go to the light, and what's going to happen when you're out of the safe space was quite interesting as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Um, yeah, I debated on the silence because Dario can attest to this too. We've experimented some with doing active imaginations with drumming or with silence, and the drumming. Some people find it helps it like it's easier to kind of open up to the process and to really get into the intuitive space, and then some people find it distracting. So I opted for the silence, so we can at least be equal opportunity.
Well done. Anybody else? Yeah,
Dario.
Dario?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Elena, for giving a nice. I think Jung would be very happy to hear an active imagination activity was part of type workshop. Um, and I also chose the one on the right, even though the one on the left is interesting, but I'm like, this is way too busy, and my attention was going to the right, and I really love that little bit of slowing down with the breathing um and I came in a little bit late, so I wasn't exactly sure who I might be meeting, but I came with this idea that there's going to be some kid there. Um, and I actually repeatedly encountered on the trip, besides a kid who did like lead me through the woods, and it was that part was lovely, and just getting into nature, and it really inspired a song, which is what I learned in the shamanic tradition. When you do the medicine walk through nature, you let a song come out, and there was just that feeling of lying there and reaching the white misty light, and I realized, even though we think of the sun as yellow, that when you get a heavy mist in the morning, which doesn't happen much here, but in the UK, I know I remember times, especially in Scotland, there's like this mist, and then the light is actually white,
Mm.
and it's really beautiful that way, and sort of just enjoying that. But yeah, there was also a wolf along the way that kept popping in and out, and this is Fenris, who's not like a happy, friendly wolf, reminding me that I had promised that I would do a drum journey to visit Fenris the wolf. So he's like, I'm so glad to see you're on a journey now, but if you could please come over and do the one you said you would do with me. And so that was funny how that worked. But yeah, it was really nice to just slow down for a minute, and thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Any other questions just about inner parenting or, yeah, Doris.
Yeah, this is something that also came up in the previous session. How, in your experience, unarticulated thought, but
Mhm.
how, in your experience, does the reparenting um, correlate with like midlife? How does it come out around that
Mm,
the type development and the individuation piece, and we're coming into our own, and we're, avoiding the one-sidedness, and the age definitely changes something in the
mhm.
circuitry. And
Yeah.
naturally, I would argue, even like whether or not you're aware of your type preferences and actually have the model to guide you to where you're supposed to be, or what's supposed to be, or what's going to happen, or whether you can put words to it or not. So yeah, any thoughts on midlife age related reparenting?
Yeah, so definitely agree that as we, progress into our 30s, into our 40s, our first our tertiary and then our inferior functions start kind of gaining strength, and they're able to push up into our conscious awareness more. And so I guess for me, I started my inner parenting when I was around, I don't know, 32, 33, something like that. So I feel like I am more attuned to those parts of me, so they're not having to be aggressive. Like I've already built a relationship, between my extroverted thinking and my, tertiary introverted feeling. My inferior extroverted sensing, so that there's that relationship of trust that's already built, and it's more a matter of, hey, I need attention, rather than I'm trying to, throw a tantrum. I'm trying to grab for what I need. So I would suspect that if somebody hasn't been doing, that kind of compassionate self-management work, that at midlife you're going to start seeing a much more aggressive kind of energy from the lower functions as they gain a little strength, and as their needs have been kind of suppressed now for too long to really be denied anymore. Um, so, um, if you're finding something like that might be happening, then just kind of taking the, okay, let me make space for this part of myself, and let me allow this part of myself to express that it's been neglected, that it has maybe this anger or this sense of abandonment. And let me take the time to listen and to hear what it has to say. And so, like for you as an ENFJ, your introverted intuiting would actually probably be really powerful for that listening and that perspective taking, and that, letting me, like, let me get really into the perspective of this other part of myself, and kind of see it from within its own eyes, rather than like those of your typical adult self. So, and actually, if I may, because I had heard your comment in Joel and Antonia's session, just kind of looking at uh, ENJs in general, because I have a couple clients and a lot of friends who have either ENFJ or ENTJ preferences. Um, Introverted intuiting as the inner parent function really seems to excel at, let me pull up to the macro level view. Let's look at the big picture and kind of get out of that extroverted sensing in the moment. Do it now. We got to go, 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 go kind of intensity. So it's slowing down, kind of pulling up to look at, the whole picture. And and that can be really just helpful in general to kind of break out of the extroverted feeling, extroverted sensing, let's just do all the things all the time kind of energy.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's something that resonated in the last session as well. Thank you again, Antonio. 10, 20 years ago, that definitely would have been me, right? Blah. But I'm turning 50 in June, so things are shifting.
Last 2 minutes, Elena.
I guess I can throw out a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, between both of the sessions, I'm kind of seeing it's kind of like when the content hits the moment, it's like things are starting to click for me. So I'm very grateful for both of these, and um, like I've been reflecting how my my TI child has um, like when I was in school, and it's like you're supposed to like respond to answers very quickly. And like as an introvert that wants to process, that's not something that really happens. So it's like I learned very early on, it's okay if I take a while to respond as long as I say something intelligent. So like it
Mm.
really caused me to really want to show up with TI when I am trying to talk to people, be in a presentation, something like that. And so it feels like that's how I'm supposed to be out in the world. And trying to figure out the parenting side of, okay, oh, it doesn't have to be so on all the time, and that extroverted feeling, like you can just be present in that way. Um, Still something that has to sink in. I still have to figure out how to interparent myself in that way, but it's very important to me. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Well, that is a beautiful example of how dynamics that got set in childhood can continue to show up in our adult life. And yeah, like if you still feel like you're like this pressure to always be intelligent or to have something to say, you can use your inner parent, that extroverted feeling, relationship management piece, and say, hey, I need to sleep on this because that's when I do my best thinking, and kind of like just use your relationship management to set up. I might need to come back to you tomorrow after I've had a chance to kind of think it through. And then you can still kind of honor that desire for your, inner 10-year-old to show up with intelligence, with something really to contribute, but you don't have to do it in a pressured way. And you can kind of attune to that moment and the connection that you have, or the relationship that you have in that moment without having to pull back from it or pressure yourself to do it right then and there. So just off the cuff, that would be my suggestion if you
Yeah, thank
take
you
it
so
or leave
much.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Elena, for your presentation. And again,
Yeah.
this moment of silence, exploration, and connectedness with our inner child.
Yeah.
It's been great to hear you and to have your presentation today. I will stop the recording.